famous rant about the power of television to control our culture and frame political issues by the character Howard Beale in the 1976 film Network still rings true today, almost 50 years later, when he shouted, "This tube can make or break presidents, popes, prime ministers. This tube is the most awesome force in the whole godless world, and woe to us if it ever falls into the hands of the wrong people." Unfortunately, it did fall into the hands of the wrong people, the wrong corporations and Operation Mockingbird assets, and they're using the same propaganda techniques perfected almost 100 years ago now by Edward Bernays to wage a cultural Marxist war on Western civilization. Edward Bernays is the man credited as the father of public relations and was a master of social engineering, propaganda, and shaping public opinion. He was also the nephew of the famous psychologist Sigmund Freud, which may help explain how he became interested in psychology. And in 1928, he published a book titled Propaganda that described his methods for shaping public opinion and people's attitudes and behaviors through the use of mass media, where he openly admitted, quote, "Those who manipulate the unseen mechanism of society constitute an invisible government, which is the true ruling power of our country. We are governed, our minds molded, our tastes formed, our ideas suggested, largely by men we have never heard of. In almost every act of our lives, whether in the sphere of politics or business, in our social conduct or ethical thinking, we are dominated by the relatively small number of persons who understand the mental processes and social patterns of the masses. It is they who pull the wires that control the public mind, who harness old social forces and contrive new ways to bind and guide the world." This is basically what George Orwell said in his classic novel 1984, where he wrote that all the beliefs, habits, tastes, emotions, mental attitudes that characterize the time were designed to sustain the mystique of the party and prevent the true nature of present-day society from being perceived. Bernays is basically the guy who got women to smoke cigarettes, because in 1929 he was hired by the American Tobacco Company to help them promote smoking. And he did this by hiring a group of models to light up cigarettes while marching in the Easter Sunday parade in New York City in order to break the taboo of women smoking in public. And then he sent out a press release saying they lit up torches of freedom to support women's rights. The following day, the New York Times ran an article with the headline, "Group of Girls Puff Cigarettes as Gesture of Freedom." He really was an evil genius. Of course, Operation Mockingbird has a lot to do with the way the mainstream media in America functions today, and the fact that most people still aren't familiar with it speaks volumes about their effectiveness. It's fairly well known that Ms. Magazine, started by the feminist activist Gloria Steinem in the early 1970s, was funded through Operation Mockingbird in order to promote the feminist revolution with the goal of breaking down the family and traditional gender roles. And the CIA is also admitted to funding musicians in Cuba, where they recruited popular Cuban hip-hop artists and rappers and then used them to encourage their fans to rise up against the communist president Raul Castro. The declassified documents show that the agency used a front group called Creative Associates International and spent millions of dollars working to undermine Cuba's communist government through the use of musicians. That is the power of propaganda. If we look back over 200 years ago and simply read the confiscated writings of Adam Weishaupt and the other original members of a certain infamous organization you're not supposed to talk about, we can even see that back then they understood the power of controlling information. One excerpt from these authentic, confirmed writings explains, quote, "By establishing reading societies and subscription libraries and taking these under our direction and supplying them through our labors, we may turn the public mind which way we will, or whichever way that they want it. In like manner, we must obtain influence in the military academies, the printing houses, bookseller shops, chapters, and in short, all offices which have any effect in forming or managing or directing the mind of man. You can read more about the original writings of the, you know what, secret society in my book, Inside the, you know what, Evidence, Objectives, and Methods of Operation, which you should order in paperback from Amazon.com after finishing this video. Link in the description below. Neil Postman, who was a famous media analyst in the 1980s, whose classic book, Amusing Ourselves to Death, Public Discourse in the Age of Show Business, explains that television as a medium compared to books and newspapers is extremely limited in its ability to transmit quality information because it's packaged into small sound bites and brief segments that are only 2 or 3 minutes long, which can't even begin to convey the details, historical context, or complex ideas needed to deliver complete and quality messages to the audience. Decades ago, he concluded that our mass media-infused future may be a mix between an Orwellian nightmare and a Huxleyan circus, saying, "In an age of advanced technology, spiritual devastation is more likely to come from an enemy with a smiling face than one whose countenance exudes suspicion and hate. In the Huxleyan prophecy, Big Brother does not watch us by his choice, we watch him by ours. There's no need for wardens or gates or ministries of truth when a population becomes distracted by trivia, when cultural life is defined as a perpetual round of entertainments, when serious public conversation becomes a form of baby talk, when, in short, a people become an audience and their public business a vaudeville act, then a nation finds itself at risk. Cultural death is a clear possibility." In the 1960s, a famous study was conducted to see how children mimic violent behavior they see others engaging in, known as the Bobo doll experiment, which involved leaving a group of children in a room with a Bobo doll, an inflatable punching bag basically that stands on the ground and is weighted by the bottom so that when you hit it, it tips over and then rises back up again. And the researchers found that even though the Bobo doll was in the room with the children, along with a bunch of other toys, they mostly ignored it until a research participant came in the room and started hitting it. And then, monkey see, monkey do, the kids started mimicking the behavior and punching the doll. It's a classic experiment in social learning theory and observational learning. And just like the children mimicked the behavior they saw there, they mimic the behaviors they see in the media. Another shocking phenomenon regarding people being influenced to say or believe things which clearly aren't true can be found in the Ash conformity experiments in the 1950s conducted by psychologist Solon Ash, which showed that most people will abandon their own beliefs and opinions and conform to those of the majority group so that they don't feel ostracized. One of the experiments involved groups of people who were all said to be participants in the experiment, but all except one were actually actors and in on it. And then the group was shown a card with a line on it, and then another card with 3 lines on it, each of them labeled A, B, and C, and they were all different lengths, and then asked which line was the same length as the line on the first card. And all the actors were told before the experiment to pick a line that wasn't the same length. And what the experiment found was almost always the one lone person not in the know, the actual test subject, would agree with them. The experiments showed that the subjects would just go along with the group, even doubting their own perceptions when everyone else was claiming that a different line was the same length. In order to avoid feeling like the odd man out, they would just simply agree with everyone else. In leading the moronic masses like marionettes are the high priests of Hollywood, whose puppet masters employ the halo effect, which is the psychological phenomenon where someone's impression of another's ability or value is influenced by their overall thoughts and feelings about that person. So when someone has a favorable view of a celebrity because they enjoy their films or music or whatever, most people, the dumbed down masses, literally see everything that they say or do in a favorable light and think that they're an expert or that they're espousing some profound wisdom whenever they express their opinion on something. Me, on the other hand, I'm just a guy in my kitchen on a laptop. Technically, I guess I'm a media analyst with a bachelor's degree in communication and a passion for the truth. So if you like watching my monologues like this, then you'll really love reading my books. So order Hollywood Propaganda, How TV, Movies, and Music Shape Our Culture, or The True Story of Fake News in paperback on Amazon.com, or download the ebook from any of the major ebook stores. My books are a lot more in-depth and serious serious than my videos, which I do like to clown around in, but I'm also a very serious person. So head on over to Amazon.com or click the link in the description below and check them out.